We're here to get started with our program. Again, I'd like to thank Motion Spray as one of the sponsors. Gentleman right there is in for Motion Spray, and also thank Domtar, we're the primary sponsors today. And it's a pleasure to introduce Melissa Reichert, from the President of the Heart of Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, everyone. I too am going to say the sponsors' names just one more time. Domtar, we really appreciate all you do to help support the Chamber of Commerce. Craig, Rich, and Michelle for being here today. And also Ocean Spray, Tom and Mike. We couldn't do what we do without our sponsors, so it's so important that you're here. I also have a couple board members here today, Rich Moon and Nan Taylor. Rich is with Domtar, Nan Taylor's with Aspirus. It means a lot to have board supported events like this, so thank you very much for being here. I wanted to take the time to invite all of you to Business After Hours on Monday evening. That's a time when we can get together, celebrate the successes we've had in the last year, and kind of make plans for the future, have a cup of holiday cheer with members of the Chamber of Commerce. It's also being sponsored by REGI, that's our Regional Economic Growth Initiative. So Rick will be there to show you his office and tell you a little bit about REGI. Crossroads Renewal, that's one of the tenants that's down in our lower level. And then O'Connor Coaching, they're sponsoring it alongside with us. And Venus is very generously providing us with some refreshments for that evening. So thank you very much for that. A couple of other events that you need to be aware of. Our annual meeting for the Chamber of Commerce will be on February 22nd. That's a great time to celebrate the businesses in the community that have made an impact over the past year. Central Wisconsin Days, that's one of the things that we're really interested in today here. We're starting to form our issues to take down to Madison, so we need your input for those. So when we get to the question and answer period, if you're having issues within your individual businesses that you would like addressed by the power of the chambers in Central Wisconsin and the business people that come along with us down there, let us know what those issues are. That'll be March 21st and 22nd. For the second year, the State Chamber, along with WMC, is going to Washington, a Washington, D.C. fly-in. Those dates are February 13th and 14th if you're interested in going out to Washington. And basically, it's just like Central Wisconsin Days, except it's at the federal level. So please let me know if you'd like to be involved in that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our expert facilitator. I so appreciate Craig's help over the years with these events, and let him run the show.
Thank you very much. Let's give the Chamber a round. Well, as you know, there's absolutely nothing going on at either the federal or state level in legislation. But what I thought, for the benefit of our invited guests, maybe let's start, Rick, let's maybe start just with a quick introduction so they kind of know who the audience is this morning, just maybe who you are, who you're with.
You saw me put that in my mouth, didn't you?
I was waiting till you swallowed, so we were fine. So.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rick Bacoka. I'm with the Regional Economic Growth Initiative, REGI.
Good morning, I'm Gordon Crow with Synergy.
And by the way, standing is optional. You don't have this if you'd like to. There you go.
That's my only aerobic gain for today.
If I don't stand, no one will see me, right? I'm Michelle Bean, from HR Manager from Domtar.
Mark Swenson, Plant Manager worldwide.
Let's maybe head right there.
Kim Johnson, I'm the Chief Nurse at Aspirus here in Wood Rapids.
Good morning, I'm Patty Lumby, I'm the Town of Grand Rapids Supervisor.
I'm Nancy Roth-Malik, I'm the CFO at Aspirus Riverview.
Lisa Skibba, I'm Vice President of Ancillary Services at Aspirus Riverview.
Dan Taylor, Director of Business Development at Aspirus Riverview.
Jason Greenberg, Planning and Zoning Director for Wood County Planning Office.
Harold Altenberg, farmer. Leased the farm out to the school at Altenberg Farm.
There you go. And good news, too.
Good morning, I'm Rich Moon. I work at Domtar Nakusa as their controller.
Andrew Simon, Town of Grand Rapids Supervisor.
Arnie Nystrom, Grand Rapids Town Board Chairman.
Heather Griswick, Manager of Continuing Education at Mid-State Technical College.
Rick Merton, Encourage Community Foundation.
Mike Barrett, President of Wisconsin Rapids Community Theater. Good morning.
Craig Bernstein, the new Workforce Development Manager with Midstate. I'm on day 2.
Well, Bobby Dammer, I'm also at Mid-State Technical College as a Workforce Development Leader.
Good morning. Get back toward the cranberry world there.
Tom Tritt, plant manager at Ocean Spray. Mike Doherty, controller, Ocean Spray.
Adam Kagan, City of Wisconsin Rapids Community Development.
And he wants to be known as the first person in the door this morning.
First time ever.
So you thought it was at 7? You're saying?
You have to adjust your clocks for daylight savings.
Madeline Petson with the city also in Adam's department.
Doc, we'll head back to you.
Tom Belton, the Chief Medical Officer at Aspirus for Review.
Todd Birch, Spires for Review.
Rob Bansky, the Chief of Staff and Legislative Liaison at UW Stevens Point.
Lee Chipman, Venus, Liam Spark, Chipman Farms.
I'm Bill Clendenny, Wood County Board, representing the town of Grand Rapids.
Kyle Cronin, Port Edwards School District Administrator.
Sandy Hatt, Wisconsin Rapids School Board.
Mary Ray Olm, Wisconsin Rapids School Board.
Craig Broad, Superintendent, Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools.
Thank you. I feel so good because we have, if you have any type of a medical issue this morning, I would recommend either that table or that table there. So, anyway, thank you. Thanks for everybody for coming, a great attendance this morning. What we've asked our folks, our invited guests, and again, thank you all for attending this morning, to talk a little bit about what's going on in their particular worlds, and then we will, as I say, will be informal, and any questions you have, we'll have time for those. And I know, and as in past, if you have specific issues that you'd like to talk to them one-on-one, I'm sure they'd be happy to do that this morning. We will. I'm going to go right down my list here. We'll start in District 72 representative. I called him a U.S. Congressman at one of these one time.
Wait a few more years.
Yeah. Again, welcome Scott Krug. Good morning, Scott. Nice to have you here.
This in-between space. So just first of all, thanks for being here this morning. It's really encouraging to see the attendance of this event going up and up and up over the years as we do this and get together. It's really an impactful thing for us in the legislature, whether it's state or federal, to have individuals engaged and in the process and being part of what we're doing on a daily basis. Because we're not experts, right? We know a little bit about everything, but you folks are the experts. Workforce development, medical, manufacturing, whatever the case may be, we need the input you have to make sure that we can do our jobs right. So I appreciate you being here for the first part. I really appreciate the Chamber continuing this event. It's a really important thing for community involvement. So let me get started a little bit about what's been going on in Madison the last, 6 months or so. It's been kind of a busy time frame. State budget ran a little bit late. We ended up getting the state budget done in September, getting some big things done in the state budget, especially for central Wisconsin. Senator Test and I really pushed really hard to get some money into the city of Wisconsin Rapids and into the airport in particular, because of all the things going around Sand Valley down in the town of Rome. So we got about $4 million allocated to Alexander Field for improvements, expansion, making sure they're ready for the traffic that's going to be coming up the next few years. We saw quite an influx of jets coming in on a daily basis. Arnie keeps me updated every time there's a plane coming in. He tells me what kind it is, what time I got there. Yeah, I get a picture every time. And it's great because towards the end of the summer, we actually had that airport at capacity. It was filled with jets like you wouldn't believe, and that is a great thing. That's the tip of the iceberg. That's nothing. That was one course open down at Sand Valley. Next year, there'll be 3 courses open. Mammoth Dunes just kind of getting started as a second course. That's the one that people are really, really getting excited about nationwide. There's an article today just in Golf Magazine again about the impact, the economic impact of Mammoth Dunes and Sand Valley to central Wisconsin. It's a big deal. This is what we've been waiting for, our opportunity to redevelop an economy, to grow our tourism, to bring back individuals with capital and ideas and investment dollars to put back into our communities to find some new and exciting things to do. So we're super excited to get that done in the state budget so we can make sure that when they're flying in that they're not landing on runways that make them all bumpy and crazy and not want to fly those $1 million jets into, well, not $1 million jets, tens of millions of dollars of jets into our airport. The other thing we worked on pretty vociferously that we didn't quite get across the finish line I want to talk about a little bit today was the Tribune Project. We worked really close with Encourage throughout the last year trying to make sure we get this across the finish line. Didn't quite get there. I've had a few members of Joint Finance that weren't quite comfortable with the project yet, but my message back to people about that project is in other areas of the state, we've had similar projects like that take 2 budgets, 3 budgets, 4 or 5 years to get done. The fight's not over, and I really encourage to make sure that the Tribune Project, and Gordon already talked about it a little bit with us this morning as we're in line, that the Tribune Project is one of those things that when Central Wisconsin Days comes up that you're advocating hard for. So part of the agenda we wanted to talk about this morning was talent acquisition, right? That's a big deal for Central Wisconsin for talent acquisitions. Have something like the Tribune Building being the center focal point downtown, making sure that we have business incubator space, making sure that we have things that attract the millennial ideas to downtown Wisconsin Rapids again. Those are the things that are going to drive that growth going into the future because of the people coming in from Sand Valley who are going to want to stay a little bit longer, see that there's some investment in our community, some new things happening. These two things in conjunction can't exist without each other. So I need the advocacy for Sand Valley to continue and for the Tribune Building to get done. So those are my 2 big priorities, making sure we keep those things at the top of the radar going forward into the next session. State budget otherwise, I'll let Pat talk about some other stuff in the state budget. I want to move on a little bit to Foxconn. People talk about all the good and some talk about the bad that goes along with Foxconn. There was WMC, the State Chamber of Commerce, had an event this week that the Foxconn folks were at, and they talked about one of the things in particular that interested me. It was not just the 13,000 jobs and the $10 billion in investment and the $5 billion supply chain type deal. But one of the things they talked about yesterday was bringing in, what do they call it? They bring in, can't remember the words now. Anyways, an economic development project similar to Silicon Valley in infrastructure, information technology, future advancements. So Foxconn's talking more about bigger things than just their factory and building screens and building TVs and buying from people in Wisconsin for supplies. They're talking about developments in healthcare. They're talking about the ginseng companies in the state of Wisconsin. They're talking about any and every opportunity they can for sectors of our economy outside of southeast Wisconsin. So when I hear people say, well, Foxconn, it's a great thing for southeast Wisconsin, what are we going to get out of it? We brought an entire new industry to the state of Wisconsin. An entire new industry to North America. Not just the United States, not just Wisconsin, but an entire new industry to North America. Kind of puts us in the same mold that we've had with Ocean Spray, being the biggest part of North American operations right here in Wisconsin Rapids. Kind of puts us in the same frame that we had with paper making in central Wisconsin. This is a big deal. This is new industry. This is new technology. And that new technology leads to advances in talent acquisition. That new technology is going to make us have to import engineers. Right now, we export engineers like you wouldn't believe. Every time a kid goes to school at UW for engineering, I got my degree, where am I going to go? Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Chicago. Now engineering degrees are going to be cranking out people to come to the state of Wisconsin to work. That is a big deal. Talent acquisitions. When we talk about our workforce in the state of Wisconsin, we've got the lowest unemployment rate that we've had on record. We've got more people working in the state of Wisconsin today than we ever had before. And we're adding these new jobs and these new industries, and people keep saying that's great, but where are we going to get the talent from? That's a very valid question. That's something we've got to work on a lot at this point right now. When you have such low unemployment and such high demand for companies to want to expand in the state of Wisconsin, and we have a rapidly aging population at the same time, we've got to do some things. We've got to figure out how to get people interested in coming to the state of Wisconsin. So at the same event that I talked about, that the governor was at with WMC, talking about Foxconn, he announced this initiative to do what he called basically an advertising campaign, $6.8 million, to reach out to people who had graduated from the UW, who moved to Chicago, or people who graduated from UW who moved out of state anywhere else, saying, hey, you know what? That degree that you spent so much time on and that effort you put in so much in the state of Wisconsin, you don't have to live anywhere else. We've got the talent, we've got the jobs here. Come on back, come home. That's going to be something we're going to deal with in the legislature to see if that's something that there's will in the legislature for to spend to advertise to bring people back to the state of Wisconsin. We've got to do more with our Fast Forward program, making sure that we're getting those dollars into the communities to retrain and upskill people all across our sectors so that the entry-level folks can start taking some of those jobs and we can transition people into bigger and better things. That's our biggest thing we can do for small to medium businesses in the state of Wisconsin right now is workforce development, filling the fast forward dollars, making sure we're helping with talent acquisition, making sure that the people are always there. Because when I talk to employers, constantly talk to employers, and their biggest two challenges, it's not that they can't necessarily find people, it's just they can't find people who are dependable and reliable. Those are the two things we got to figure out too. The dependability, we've got a lot of employers who tell me that they could hire people right now. They could find people that could fill out a job application, complete a resume, or actually pass a drug test. We've got some challenges with that. We've got to figure out how to make sure that we can find that pipeline of people, because anybody in the state of Wisconsin right now who wants a job should be able to have one, period. I mean, we're getting to the point where we're going to be less than 3% unemployment. Jobs are here. When I started, I couldn't necessarily say that. We had a jobs problem when I first started. Now we got a worker problem. We've got so many jobs, we got to figure out where the workers are coming from. So that's going to take a collective effort on our part, whether it's the local chambers, state chamber, legislature, executive branch, to figure out those programs and ideas so we can make targeted investments in education, and talent acquisition, workforce development, upskills, fast forward, all of those things coming together into the next state budget to figure out how do we develop a pipeline for employers, for people to keep coming to Wisconsin. You're seeing it on a weekly basis at this point. Companies say, okay, well, we're going to leave, we're going to take some, what was it, Badger Meter last week. They've got an operation in Arizona and one in Wisconsin. They said, well, we're going to close down our Arizona stuff and bring it all back to Wisconsin. It's going to keep happening a lot more and more and more over the next few years. So we've got some work to do. I'm excited about it. With Foxconn done, state budget done, all the local stuff we've got done in the state budget, I don't think we could have had a better session so far. Super excited about where we're going with some things, and there's a lot more to talk about. So if you've got questions, comments, concerns about anything I've been working on the last year, give me a phone call. Just knock on my door, call me, email me. I'll answer whatever you've got. So that's about all I got for now. Any quick questions?
Actually, we're going to
wait for questions?
We're going to
Good.
do questions
All
at
right,
the end. So thank you.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Scott. Well, we'll move to the other chamber. We're in the 24th Senate District, which I'm sure you know, in our state senator, Patrick Teston. Welcome. Glad to have you this morning.
Well, it's great to be here, and thank you, Craig, and the chamber. And it's so great to have so many leaders here from the medical community, local government, from our cranberry industry, mid-state, and our K-12 districts. Scott hit it out of the park on highlighting some of the things that we've been working on. And Scott and I think I talked to you more than I talked to my wife some days.
Yeah. There was a joke yesterday that we call each other before we go to bed, but that doesn't matter.
really trying to focus and work on central Wisconsin, particularly right here in southern Wood County, on what we can do to better this area. And Scott touched on the things that we got in the state budget, like the airport. But want to talk about some of the other big picture items within the state budget as well. When I was here last year, when I was running for this office, and spent 11 months going door to door talking to folks about what the priorities were and what we need to focus on. And again, as Scott mentioned, a lot of it was workforce. And for me, that workforce development starts in the classroom. And that's why even when I ran for this office, I said we need to put money back into our classroom. And in this state budget, we did just that. $636 million. The largest increase in K-12 education in our state's history, going back into the classroom, putting more money into educators' hands to train up our future workforce. Because as Scott mentioned as well, we have an aging demographic in the state. Our population that's 65 or older is going to increase by 72% over the next 2 decades. We have more people leaving the workforce than entering the workforce. And short of telling people to have more kids, we need to find ways to, yeah, you were taking care of that part. I realize I was informed that I haven't done my part yet. No rush, but in all seriousness, we need to give our students every opportunity to be successful. So when they leave that classroom, they leave that high school, and they go on to either a 4-year college degree or a 2-year technical college, or directly into the workforce, they are going to have the skills and resources they need to be successful. Because that's one of the biggest issues that we hear right now. It's already been highlighted. We have one of the highest labor participation rates in the country. Our unemployment rate's the lowest it's been in almost 20 years. But on average, over the last 12 months, we've had over 100,000 job opens in the state of Wisconsin. And just about every day I go to the job center website that we have here in the state just to see what jobs are available, how many available. Right now, we have over 104,000 jobs. Now, when you take a look at how many resumes are posted on that very same website, there's about anywhere between 45 to 50,000 resumes. So if we were to match every resume with an appropriate job that they are qualified for, we're still short 50,000. 50,000 jobs. So that just tells me the investments that we made in the state budget are hopefully going to retain our talent right here, but then also send a clear message across this country that Wisconsin has a compelling story to tell. Through the reforms that have been made over the last several years, to the reforms that we continue to make, as Scott mentioned, things like Foxconn, transformational issues that really send a clear message that we're doing things right. And other states should take notice. And no offense to our federal delegation, Washington could probably learn a thing or two from what we're doing down in Madison. But some of the other things that we got incorporated in the state budget was tax reform. You know, as we hear that in the news today, and it sounds like the U.S. Senate's actually going to hopefully vote on tax reform today, we actually delivered on real tax reform. You know, show of hands, can anyone tell me the last time we eliminated 2 taxes completely off the state books? If you say never, you're correct. It's never happened before. You know, we got rid of the forestry mill tax. So when you get your property tax bill, the state property tax line, it's gone. We eliminated it. We're on pace to get rid of the personal property tax. So that's the tax the example I always use is for tavern owners. You know, when they go out and they buy new bar stools, new TVs, they pay sales tax on those items, but then they pay a tax on those items year after year after year. It's probably the most regressive tax that we have in the entire state. And when we talk to small business owners, they say, you know what, if that were to go away, we will have more opportunities to invest in our business, to expand and grow, hire new workers, and continue to grow our economy. So we're on pace to get rid of that as well. Now, some of the other items that we got incorporated in the budget, as it was pointed out, we did get the airport included, which was a huge victory. And believe me, that was not an easy task. I remember when Scott and I, we first sat down, we started talking to Mayor Verwink and Rick. I said, all right, I'm on board. Let's get to work. And when I first pitched it to our leadership, Senator Fitzgerald, and I won't use his exact line, he said, no way. And it was a little bit more colorful for those of you who may know Senator Fitzgerald. And I said, all right, come on, Fitz, we can do this. We need this. And it wasn't until we were actually out in D.C. for a trip, and it was myself, Senator Fitzgerald, and some of our leadership, including co-chair, JFC co-chair, Senator Darling. And we're sitting down at lunch one day, and we're talking about just all the great things that are happening right here in the area, talking about Sand Valley, talking about the project, like the Tribune project. And as we were talking about Sand Valley and why we need this airport project, I could tell that Senator Darling was kind of getting excited about it. She's like, this is great. This is a great project. We need this. And she started lobbying on Senator Fitzgerald, and I'm like, yeah, we got this. And so we kept working on it. And with the efforts between Senator Krug in the Assembly and the outreach that we had from our local officials here, we got incorporated in the state budget. But some of the other great things that we got in the state budget were things like broadband. $23 million in broadband expansion grants and the TEACH program. You know, that's another thing too, as we talk about economic development and talent attraction. Millennials, people my age, they are hard pressed to come to an area if they can't connect to high-speed internet. Our educators, they need it in the classroom. More and more, our curriculums are being developed online, tablets, doing coursework, you know, really modernizing the way we do things in the classroom. And I have some school districts in the 24th Senate District where they have to loan out hotspots to their students because even though they may have great internet connection right there in the hallways and in the classroom, you go a couple miles outside of town, there's nothing. And I can't tell you how many times I had conversations with parents that would tell me they have to take their son or daughter, go sit in a parking lot for a couple hours so they can get Wi-Fi, so their kids don't fall behind in their coursework. That's a problem because we can't have any area, we can't have any individual lag behind their colleagues just because they can't connect. What was once considered a luxury 15, 20 years ago, well, it's not a luxury anymore. It is part of our infrastructure. And so what we got incorporated into the budget are grants that are going to help our smaller providers go into the truly underserved areas. Prime example, I live in the township of Holland, just outside Stevens Point. They recently received a a broadband expansion grant, and they're partnering with the Amherst Telephone Company. They're literally going door to door, talking to people about this, getting people connected, which is great news. It's great for our classrooms, it's great to attract new talent, it's great for small businesses, and then even for the healthcare profession. When patients are being transported from an ambulance to a hospital, they need to be able to transmit that data in real time, so our medical professionals, they can administer life-saving treatments on the spot. And when we talk about healthcare, rural healthcare is another issue that we heard a lot about as well. And so in this budget, we incorporated 2 $1 million matching grant programs to help train rural clinics and hospitals, train their advanced practice clinicians and allied health professionals. So that way, no matter where you live in the state of Wisconsin, you shouldn't have to drive an hour, 2 hours, in some cases 3 hours, just to see a physical therapist. Because in some of our counties, the job vacancy rates in these professions are 10% or more. So we want to give our administrators the flexibility to administer these programs, to train up that workforce. Now, some of the other items that I've been working on, just this past, well, I guess we're in December now, so in November, had 6 bills that were signed into law, and I want to talk about a couple of them. One was dealing with fentanyl. We are all well aware of the opioid crisis that has plagued our state and our country over the last few years. It seems like every day, every week, we hear a tragic story of people who have overdosed, people who have died and succumbed to their illness. And one of those is fentanyl, which, for those of you who aren't aware, it's essentially a synthetic heroin that is 50 times more potent than heroin. And there are some strands that are 50,000 times more potent than heroin. And what's happening is that dealers are cutting the stuff in the heroin to make it more addictive and more deadly. It's even dangerous for law enforcement. When they administer search warrants or they're going through a house or a home, all it takes is just a trace amount to overdose on. You hear stories of officers, excuse me, officers have to be administered Narcan so they don't overdose. And so what we did, and what the trouble has been for law enforcement and prosecutors, is that under the old law, is that you could change the chemical formula just enough that would be outside the purview of the law. So what our legislation did, and it's been touted as model legislation for the country and other states, is that it took every known analog, every variation of fentanyl that we were aware of, and then for every future analog, we created an umbrella. So that way, whoever is in possession of it is in violation of a Class I felony, and anyone who sells, manufactures, or distributes in violation of a Class E felony. Now, to show you how time-sensitive this was, it passed the Assembly on a Thursday night. The next day, the governor had to sign it into law, because we had found out from the DEA that the following week they were going to schedule a new analog. And if that would have happened, we would have had to have restarted the entire legislative process. So our goal is, with the work that's being done with the HOPE agenda and with this new legislation, is that we are going to continue to try and fight to get this stuff off the streets, but more importantly, we're going to help those who are in the throes of addiction get the resources that they need to become productive members of society again and break the habit of addiction. Now, another bill I'm really proud of that was just signed into law yesterday was the industrial hemp bill, and this is one that I know Amy Sue had worked on for a number of years in her time in the legislature, and we finally got it done. Industrial hemp, at one time the state of Wisconsin was the leading national producer of industrial hemp in the country, up until about 1957 when, because of its close relation to marijuana, they're kind of lumped in together and it was banned. And for those because I'll be honest, when the idea was first pitched to me by State Representative Jesse Kramer, I was like, that's, you're talking about marijuana. He's like, no, God, no. And I'm like, okay, well, and I'm like, well, let me do my research and I'll get back to you. And as I start reading up on this stuff and realize the history, the rich history that we have of this crop here in the state of Wisconsin, I sat down and told myself, why aren't we doing this? You know, the THC concentration in industrial hemp is, the language that we use in our bill is 0.3%, whereas in marijuana, it's anywhere from 5 upwards to 25%. So I tell people you could go smoke a whole field of this stuff. Worst thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to have a really bad headache. So we, early on in the process, it was one of those, I didn't think we were going to get to a point where this was actually going to get signed into law. Even when we first pitched it in caucus and to our colleagues, it was kind of a cool reception, but we stayed at it and we got pretty passionate about this because it is such a versatile crop. I mean, obviously, it's well known for the rope making industry, textile industry, but I mean, the new things that they're doing with this, anywhere from using it for graphene and batteries to replacements for Kevlar, fire retardant materials, and then even the health benefits to create CBD oils. And then in the seeds and fibers themselves, there's lots of proteins and omega-3s, sometimes more than fish oils. And it was neat when we had the Senate committee here, and we actually had a hemp farmer come up from Kentucky, and obviously here in the state of Wisconsin, we like our beverages every once in a while, right? She actually had a jar of Kentucky moonshine that was made from distilled hemp seeds. So we see this as a great way and just another tool to give our hardworking farmers to diversify their portfolios and to bring back an industry that we haven't had in the state of Wisconsin. And I passed both houses unanimously. If you would have told me earlier this year that that was going to happen, I would have said there's no way. There's no way it's going to happen. Yeah. And so we got to a point, and the governor signed into law yesterday, and it was really great to see. So I think when we look back 5-10 years from now, and we see the support industries that have come in, and all the new exciting research that's being done with this, it's going to be a huge win for the state of Wisconsin. And just a couple of other things that we're still working on. Going back to workforce development. I'm actually meeting with Heather this afternoon. We're going to be talking about things that we can do better and differently down in Madison. But what I want to put on your radar, and we haven't released it yet, but as we talk about workforce development and going back into the classroom, obviously we did, in the state budget, we had some things that helped with fabrication labs and grants, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket. What we would like to do, and the legislation I'm working on with Representative Bob Culp, is that when a school district partners with a workforce development board, that we will allow them to go above the levy caps to purchase equipment for workforce development. So we see this as another opportunity to, again, give our educators the tools that you guys need to train up that workforce, and especially in the high demand fields in the STEM areas, which are desperately needed. And so as we get closer to rolling that out, I'll be reaching out to all of you to get your feedback and hopefully your support on this, so we can continue to get our workers the skills that they need to be successful. And so with that, I'll sit back down and
thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce and recognize Fred Shoba from the DNR. He's Division Administrator, Department of Forestry, and I know a lot of you know Fred. He's still, I believe, lives in Wisconsin Rapids.
Yes, I do.
And glad to have you here.
Well, thank you.
Welcome to
very
our
much.
event.
Thank you. It's great to be here. As Craig mentioned, I have lived in Wisconsin Rapids almost my entire life. Spent a little time in rural Hayward for about 10 years, but started my career here at Coosa Papers down the road here, and raised my family here. Great place to live, great place to raise your family. Very excited about working for the DNR. I have not worked for them before. I came from the private sector, obviously, and only been with them for about a year. It's been a real learning experience for me, working with a public agency. A little different, sometimes really different, sometimes not too different. But I do have to say that it's about the people you work with, and I got to say the dedication and passion of the people that I work with at the division in forestry share the same passion and dedication for the people that worked in forestry in the private sector. And I found that very refreshing, and I think that's what it's all about. It's about people working together, and so they've been very good to me. They're helping me out and so on. So it's been great. What's going on in the Division of Forestry? They talked about the budget a little bit. The governor's budget put in a phrase there that they're going to move the divisional headquarters to Rhinelander. So we are in the process of moving to Rhinelander. And he wants me there by January 1st, 2018, and I'm going to beat him to the punch because I'm going to be there next Monday. And I'll be there starting December 4th. 4 of my key staff members that are on my key leadership team will also be there by January 1st. One already beat me there. She's up there already, and I'll have 2 other people there by January 1st. And the key purpose of the move is to put the Division of Forestry closer to the customers we serve in the division. Over half of our staff are north of Highway 29. Over half of the lands that we're responsible for are north of Highway 29. A lot of the forest industry is, as you know, more north of Madison. So the idea is to get us closer to our customers, to be able to serve them, be able to hear their needs, and provide the support that we can in order for them to be successful in their respective endeavors. So we're very excited about it. Some people aren't so excited about it, but it's a very different historical change, I think, for the state of Wisconsin. It's the first time a division of the Department of Natural Resources ever relocated its headquarters north. So it's very exciting to be part of this historical change. And I think we're going to learn a lot about it, and I think it will be very positive. Change is different for a lot of people, as you all know, but I think in the long run it'll be very good. So after we move those 4 positions north, the plan is to move an additional 20 positions that are currently have office locations in Madison. A majority of those are vacant, and that's simply because of what we've gone through over the last year with our alignment. Some of you may have heard about the department going through alignment. There was a hold on hiring until we got that all completed. So 20 positions will be relocating to that location, and that will give us roughly about a third to 40% of the positions in Madison now will be in the Northern Division office. And that's going to happen over time. It'll be a phased approach. The idea is to complete all of those and have all those positions in place by February 1st, 2019. And that ties in again to the budget language, which at that point we report to the governor as well as to the joint co-chairs of the Finance Committee as to where we are with our status. And as we go forward, we'll continue to evaluate other positions as they become vacant as to where they're best suited and best located. And so we suspect over time the division will, headquarters will probably grow to a certain degree. So we'll be in the Rhinelander Service Center, a good location. We'll be close to 2 of our really key state partners we work with, Wisconsin County Forest Association, where we assist them with the management of 2.3 million acres. We're very close to Great Lakes Timber Professionals, who is the core forest management group, or the loggers, and they deal with the managing the forest resource. So, and we'll be close to the Forest Service. We have a real good partnership with the Good Neighbor Authority. So it's going to be a good thing for us to be close. As you all know, when you're close to your customers, you have the opportunity to pick up the phone, stop for coffee, talk, and it's those casual conversations that really develop the relationships and the opportunities to work closer together. So that's kind of what's going on in my world. So if you have any questions afterwards, don't hesitate to let me know. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, we're going to move out to the federal level, and I know a lot of you, when you look at the 100 senator names and the 400 plus congressional names, and you say, is it really worth making a call into DC, and will you really hear what I want to talk about? The answer is yes, actually, but if you really want to get your voice heard, you reach out to folks that work on the ground here in the state. And we're pleased to have one of those, actually we had 2 of those this morning, but Doug Hill, Doug and I have known each other for a long, long time. And he represents U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin, and he is based in the Wausau area. So thanks for being here, Doug. Appreciate it.
Well, good morning, everybody. As Craig said, I'm Doug Hill. I'm Senator Baldwin's Director of Outreach. I am based out of the Wausau office. I handed out some pamphlets, some constituent service brochures that list all of our office locations and different things that we can do for you all. A lot of times people don't really understand, what the offices can do for them. So if you have any issue with any federal agency, whether it's passport issues, if you're trying to bring someone in for your businesses, or if you're having a problem with Medicare, Medicaid, student loans, any type of issue at the federal level, we can certainly help out, and we're there to assist you in that endeavor. So please utilize us, look at those pamphlets and share them with people in your businesses as well. I want to talk about, really approach my part of the program from 2 different standpoints. I want to talk about the macro level, then I'll talk a little bit about some of the things Senator Baldwin is working on her own. So obviously there's a lot of things happening in DC right now. 2 big things that I want to make you aware of. The tax reform process is happening right now in Washington, and last night they expected to have a final vote on it, and what ended up happening is there was a parliamentary ruling that the trigger mechanism that was being put into the reform bill, so that if the economic performance didn't actually occur or meet the metrics that it needed to, the tax breaks that were going to be in the tax bill would be eliminated or drawn back down. And the parliamentarian ruled that that couldn't happen. So they kind of had to go to back to the the basics to kind of figure out what they were going to do, because a lot of the votes that were going to be happening for the tax reform were based on that trigger being there, because there's a concern that if the economics don't perform like they think they will, that'll explode the deficit. So what they're doing this morning is, as Craig said, at about 11 o'clock our time, they're going to be having a series of votes, and I wish I could tell you what's going to happen with those votes. I don't know what's going to happen, and it's really going to depend on probably 2 or 3 senators as to what they think of the amendments that they're going to propose, if the reform will pass in the Senate. If it passes in the Senate, the House has already passed their tax reform bill. Amy Sue will talk a little bit about that. But at that point, they have to do what they call a conference committee. So you have the Senate bill and the House bill, and then they have to basically come together and merge the 2 bills, and then go back to both houses, and then revote, and then it would go back to the president to be signed. The bills are different. I don't want to say very different, but they're different enough where we might get into another pretty hefty debate on what's going to be, what the final bill is going to be, and if it'll pass. So it's going to be an interesting next couple weeks if they pass it through the Senate today. I think the goal is to have it done before Christmas, but I don't know what your guess is as good as mine as what will happen on that front. Secondly, the other big thing happening from a macro level is the continuing resolution, which was a resolution that was passed 3 or 4 weeks ago to keep the government funded. As many of you know, the fiscal year for the government runs from September to October. So when the fiscal year ran out at the end of September, the government or Congress hadn't appropriated money to fund the government, so they had to pass what they call a continuing resolution, which allows the government to keep on operating under the current spending levels. So they did that, but that continuing resolution runs out on December 8th. So on December 8th, they have to pass another continuing resolution to keep the government funded. And as we proceed in the next week, that'll be discussed more and more. And there's a number of different provisions with that will be debated in order to fund the government. So, you might hear talk about the possibility of a government shutdown at the federal level. Again, I'm not going to rule anything out. Anything could happen. I think both parties don't want that to happen. It's a bad thing. And so I think you'll see a lot of debate about that in the next couple weeks, and that's where we're at the macro level. Some of the things that I want to talk about, just very briefly, that the center is working on. I handed out a little packet of about 5 press releases. I'm not going to go through the press releases verbatim, but if you have questions afterwards, I'd be more than happy to talk about them. But I just want to highlight some of the things that are happening. This fall, in the middle part of November, as part of the appropriation process, the defense spending bill was passed, and the defense spending bill is the largest discretionary spending part of the budget. It's not mandatory like Social Security and Medicare and things like that. So it's the largest spending part of the federal budget on the discretionary side. And the senator really thought that it was important that, if we're spending American tax dollars, that when we do that, we should be buying American products for our defense industry. So she's worked in a bipartisan fashion to make sure that there were stronger provisions in that spending bill, so that when we're spending taxpayer dollars to buy things in the Defense Department, that they're actually going to be American products. So that's one of the things that she was working on. One of the things that came about is trying to reauthorize the critical funding for community healthcare centers. Community healthcare centers are really critical, especially in the rural areas. They're one of the main areas that allow primary care to take place. And so she really felt that that was very important. So she co-sponsored, again, bipartisan legislation to help strengthen and reauthorize funding for those critical care facilities. On the EPA front, there was a bill, or there was a standard that was going to be passed by EPA that would have really hurt the efforts to protect biofuel production across the country, and that really hurts Wisconsin farmers. So she worked very hard to make sure that the proposal that would cut the standards for biofuel that would hurt Wisconsin farmers was eliminated, and we were successful in doing that. And then two other items really quick. You know, startup businesses really struggle, and startups are certainly a big part of the local economic foundation as well as the national. And so one of the things that she wanted to do was make it easier for startups to really get going. And so she proposed a number of different tax reforms to allow startups to make it easier to actually get the funding to do it. So she increased the startup deduction for new small businesses from $5,000 to $20,000. The bill increased the deduction phase-out threshold for $50,000 to $120,000 and extended the startup tax deduction to organizational expenditures to ensure that they can benefit regardless if they're a partnership, an LLC, or a corporation. I'm not a tax person, so I don't know the specific details about that, but I do know that, you know, it's one of the things when she was talking to business owners and entrepreneurs, that was one of the things that, you know, they talked to her about, so she was successful in doing that. And lastly, as some of the state representatives talked about, the opioid issue. Again, it's one of those bipartisan issues where everybody agrees, you know, it's something that needs to be addressed. And she helped introduce legislation at the federal level that would invest $45 billion back into the states to allow states, counties, law enforcement to be better funded and address the various concerns with the opioids. So that's some of the things at the macro level and the micro level that she's worked on, and as with the others, if you have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. So thanks for having me.
I always enjoy introducing our next guest because I don't know if she remembers this, but in her former life, we walked around in a farm one time, and then, you know, Amy Sue Vrooink from, I always say the Millador area, I'm not sure exactly, I call it Vrooinkville out there. Glad to have Amy Sue here today, as she, of course, represents Congressman Ron Kine, so welcome, Amy.
Yeah, you can say that my family has done their share in reproducing like rabbits, so we got that covered. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here today. The Congressman sends his best regards. Now that Doug has covered everything at the federal level, you really don't need me to talk about much, but there are some things that I want to talk to you about that Ron had just introduced, a bipartisan bill, and this is to begin to plan for the future of work. Because of the automation and technology that our workers in Wisconsin have seen over the last so many years, that Ron has asked actually the national academies to study, to access the geography, the demographics, and to report to Congress on what our workforce is going to need, especially in Wisconsin and across the country, of where the workforce needs to be, where we need to be putting our money and investing in to make sure that we have what our workers are going to need and what businesses need. We talked a little bit about the tax bill, and I know that it's up to the Senate. Ron voted against it in the House. There was a number of provisions that were not so favorable to people in Wisconsin, and one of them was student deduction, that they would eliminate the access for students to be able to deduct, to itemize and deduct their student loan interest, which for a lot of students is quite a bit of chunk of change when it comes to tax time. Also, the National Independent Federation of Businesses opposed it because it was doing nothing to help our small businesses. And if you know anything about business, it's our small businesses, especially that are in our rural communities and that are building relationships and providing jobs for people in rural communities that we really rely on. Also, Harold, for the farmers, that it was going to get rid of some of the net loss that they could deduct on their taxes. That was eliminated. So a lot of the farm organizations were opposed to this tax bill as well. And the elderly, to eliminate the tax deduction for the medical expenses. And in Wisconsin, that for an average senior, that's about $3,000 that they deduct on their taxes that would really hurt them. So when we're looking at, taxes, and Ron said, we need to do tax reform. It's been 31 years. We need to do tax reform, but we have to do it responsibly. In the House version of the tax bill, it's almost nearly $2 trillion that this will cost. And if we're going to be fiscally responsible and make sure that we're passing tax reform, it has to be paid for. And it has to make sure that we are listing all the things that are very crucial to the people in the United States that are building up our economies. And if we take that ability away and we're taking the opportunity away for them to get ahead, we're not doing ourselves any favors and we're actually going backwards. Also, the Affordable Care Act, the sign-up time is nearing end now on the 15th of December. And that's for 282,000 Wisconsinites who are enrolled in the Affordable Care Act, and 30,000 are right here in the 3rd Congressional District. So it's very important that people are reminded if they are enrolled to sign up again. It's very important. A lot of people, a lot of small business people that I've talked to, the congressman hears from quite frequently, is the first time that they're actually able to afford their health insurance. Coming from a dairy farm, I can tell you back in, before my mother passed away in 2006, that my mother paid $1,200 a month for her insurance. My father paid $1,200 for his insurance, and my brother, who now runs our farm, was just a little under that. And so when people talk about the affordability of health insurance and to have that, if something does happen, is crucial to so many people. And so I just want to make sure that we're reminded of that. Again, things that Ron is listing and asking people to give feedback on are people in agriculture. The Farm Bill is set to expire next year. And he is asking people who are involved in ag to make sure that you're voicing your concerns and things that you'd like to see changed or not changed, to make sure that you get a hold of the office, get a hold of me, I'd be happy to talk about that. Also the net neutrality, about the FCC looking at now at getting rid of that. Before we have a level playing field, and depending on your contract now, that they could be able to speed up or slow down. And we talk about broadband, and we talk about this is very important for small rural businesses to be able to have that competitive edge and be able to be on a level playing field with everybody across the country. And if we're gonna, depending on where you live, you might get speeded up, you might get slowed down, depending on the size of your business, is really a detriment to having that access to the World Wide Web. I guess that's it. Do you have any questions for me? Because now I'll just start me first and we'll go back the other way. How does that sound?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
If those of you that run, especially private businesses that are going to make a lot of decisions probably before the close of business today, and you wonder, and you get a different respect for people like these people and their bosses in some cases, because you wonder why you would put yourself into the public spotlight. You're criticized basically for everything you do, and it's just, and it's like, and you need, and it's like, by 5 o'clock Eastern time on December 8th, your whole government might shut down again. So what will probably happen is they'll say, well, why don't we, because we're going to go home for Christmas, why don't we just extend it to February again? Well, then February 8th will come around, and we'll be doing the same thing. So let's give all these folks another round of applause. It's open time for questions of any type for any of our panelists, or for anybody, even folks seated here and work for other businesses. Anyone have any questions, anything that you'd like to ask? And again, they are available afterwards privately if you'd like to do that. Rick?
Yeah, Pat, what do you estimate is the eventual market for hemp here in Wisconsin?
Well, it's hard to say right now, obviously, primarily because this is going to be the first time we've had a crop since 1957, but as we've heard from members of the agricultural community, they see this as prime opportunity, especially when you take a look at the prices of corn and soy. They're rather record lows. We've heard from a number of farmers that they can put this into the rotation, and we've even heard from some processors that are ready to come into the state once the program is established in 90 days. So it's too early to say just how many are going to take advantage of this program, but I foresee it as taking off rather quickly. And in the years to come, I think you're going to see a lot of spin-off industry. Because since 2014, when this was all made possible by the Farm Bill that was signed into law by President Obama, it really left it up to the states. And since then, 34 states, we're now the 35th state to reintroduce industrial hemp back into our fields. And even including our neighbors from Michigan, Minnesota, Illinois have been growing this crop already. And it's another way to lessen our dependence on a foreign import. On average, we're importing anywhere between $500 to $600 million per year just in industrial hemp just from Canada alone. That doesn't even include China and other world markets. So we see this as the potential of being big for the state.
Thank you. Harold?
Yes, Harold Altenberg. I look at how we spend our tax dollars, and we are spending a tremendous amount for jails to try to correct people who have made wrong decisions. These young people making the wrong decisions need more guidance so they do not make wrong decisions, so you do not have to build larger jails, more prisons. And what does it cost to do that, to try to correct them? Bright Star is an idol of mine because of Rawhide, trying to change people that made wrong decisions. What in the world is wrong with us not trying to make it they prevent from making these wrong decisions?
So you're...
I think it's idiotic to spend that much money to try to change them. Why don't we do more to prevent them from making these wrong decisions?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we talk about in the legislature all the time is that it's almost impossible to legislate stupidity. And people are going to make bad choices regardless of how much we try to help them. So, and I've worked since I got elected to the legislature, even before in the legislature and corrections, on trying to make sure that people who make bad decisions, we determine how bad that decision is and not lump them all in together into the same pool saying, okay, criminal A and criminal B, you did totally different things, you're all going to end up in prison. We're not doing that in Wisconsin anymore, and we've worked really hard the last 6 years to say, you know, here's a drug court program, here's a veterans court programs, here's family intervention type programs. We are moving that model from lock them up and throw away the key to make sure that we have support in the communities to help them find jobs. They would connect with the financial resource advisors, connect with their family counseling, to make sure that we're holistically treating that person so if they ever do come into our jail, they don't come back. That's my goal, is I can't stop people from making those bad choices and ending up in jail, but I can stop them from coming through that door a second time once they get in there. So that's what I've really been working on the last 6 years here, is making sure we've got plenty of drug court money, plenty of alternative diversion type programs, making sure community corrections are beefed up so probation agent can intervene before it gets to the point of having to go to jail. Those things we've changed a lot since 1999 when the state passed truth in sentencing. So now that pendulum swung completely to say, okay, I get you messed up, but we're not going to totally throw you away and forget about you forever. We are going to try to get you back into our system. And right now, honestly, when we talk about workforce, we have to. We have absolutely no choice but to make sure that anybody that comes into our facilities are totally, as much as we possibly can, reconnect into the communities, because we can't afford to lose those people out of the workforce anymore. So we're getting there, Harold. We're getting there.
It may follow up. There is so many that need somebody to take them under their wing and guide them. I tell them, you can't do anything I don't know about. I wasn't born this age. I was born your age. I went through what you're going through. I made some wrong decisions. So we have a lot of seniors who don't know what to do with themselves. They can't sleep at night. Why can't they kind of guide these younger people from making these wrong decisions? Maybe they'll be able to sleep at night and be a little more proud of themselves. It's not always somebody else should do something. That's pointing the finger. When you do that, look in the mirror.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Just to piggyback on Harold, the whole thing is we need to be figuring how to mentor more. We need it. We do it in fire service when we're bringing people up. We assign them to a mentor that gets them through the process. We need to do that in every other business that we have, whether it's more apprenticeships or whatever. But my real question is to Pat. Pat, you talked about personal property tax elimination. have you thought about buildings that are personal property because they're on leased or rented lands?
You're talking about the dark store legislation?
Well, primarily, for example, like sitting on an airport property where pilots have their own buildings which are appraised at $60,000, $70,000 or more. So are you gonna eliminate their tax on that also? And if you are, we still provide police and fire service to them, so we would need to somehow.
I don't believe that would qualify.
Not in this session. We talked about trying to make sure that you're dealing with those individual smaller items, and so we tried to parcel out what we're getting rid of in personal property tax.
Right.
I think those other things are much bigger lifts because of the missile impact that you're talking about, so I don't think we're gonna get to those things very soon, actually.
And it should be noted too, with the starting the phase out the personal property tax, we are backfilling that with GPR. So that way municipalities aren't on the hook and you aren't having shortfalls within your budgets and shifting on property taxpayers, because, I mean, it is a big shift, and so we want to make sure that you guys are protected as well.
And just, if you don't, GPR is general purpose revenue, which is basically the tax. Get fancy. Thank you. Other questions or comments, or? Yes.
As possibly one of the only members of the arts group that are here, I want to make a comment and a thank you to the folks that are here. With a good economy and growth in that, hand in hand, the arts get support as well. And recently at the state and federal level, our group and a couple others have been receiving some attention and support from the state. We want to very publicly thank you guys for that, and let you know that from a mentoring standpoint and from a teaching children standpoint, our group is very strong. And we just want to thank everybody's support for that, and let you know things are going very good on the arts level in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? We have a couple of minutes yet. Yes, sir.
As a kid who was raised, came of age in the 60s in Southern California, any number of things I would have been jailed for that were unlawful today. So I agree with you that. My question is to our federal delegation here is, and it's a tough one. Talent attraction is, Synergy, our three top priorities are talent attraction, talent attraction, and talent attraction. And I know it's tough when you're trying to be collegial and work in a body with your peers from other states or other districts. We don't want to compete in Wisconsin, but we do want to compete with other states. What ideas do you have, or does the senator and the representative have with regards to helping us attract people to Wisconsin? What can you do, if anything, at a federal level?
That's where we kick it to the state, right?
So I know, the senator's been working on an apprenticeship bill that would enhance apprenticeship through tax credits, work with the businesses and whatnot. And she actually held a apprenticeship roundtable at Midstate, and I think I know that Ocean Spray was there, as well as a number of other businesses. And the tough part is obviously at the federal level it's bigger, and a lot of that workforce development happens through the technical schools, the workforce development boards, and the private sector. And so I think her view is that give give those institutions and those entities incentives to help with that workforce. And so I'd be more than happy to send the chamber the information on her apprenticeship bill, and then they can distribute it. But that's one of the things that she's doing at that.
And Amy Sue kind of mentioned, and it's follow up is when the federal government does kick it to the states, I think that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime that they can, because when we're talking talent attraction, if you have a federal program in place, everybody gets to be part of the federal program, right? But if the federal government gives us a chance to get block grant dollars back from the federal budget, and we can be innovative and creative, that's where our state government can go leaps and bounds beyond other states surrounding us, because I think our legislature right now is pretty damn creative, and we can figure out how to do this a lot better than Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, Indiana, because of all the people that are into inputting right now. I think it'd be a great thing if the federal government would kick it to us at the state level and say, hey, let's block grant all these dollars that go to workforce development boards, let you guys figure it out. I'd love to do that. That'd be great.
Just as the overview of Synergy is our strategy is internships, veterans, and the formerly incarcerated. I'm hoping we get to the talent summit in May with those three issues to deal with. But I also like to remind people that we only have to be better than half of the others plus one. I mean, if we're 24th in the U.S., we gain. And that's what our first goal needs to be.
Thank you. time for about one more, let's see if everyone has one. Again, they will be available for things.
Great.
Lee,
I'm kind of
I'm sorry.
a lost sheep back here. I'm actually not a young professional or nothing like this. I just got a few words. Amy Sue, I love you with all my heart. Tammy Baldwin, thank you for giving us Trump. You know, if she would have backed Bernie way back then, I appreciate it. The forestry guy, hey, well, the industrial hemp is huge. To me, that is huge. The hemp fiber is going to be huge. It's going to compete directly with the logging industry. That's good. Pat and Scott, it's hard to believe that it took this long to fix the industrial hemp thing. I mean, that disadvantaged farmers for almost 50 years. My big question for you guys is and we need workers. I hate to say this, it's hard to find good people. It's truly, I feel bad for anybody. But again, is of the 105,000 jobs that you're saying is out there, if a guy was 35 years old with 2 kids and a pregnant woman a pregnant wife, let's clarify, that couldn't work, where do I find a job that I can go, that I can get, I can pee in a cup and I'm gonna show up to work every day? Of them 105 jobs, 105,000 jobs, how many of them that I can raise a family on without having food stamps and without housing assistance, of that many, how many of them are out there? Because that's what everybody's looking for.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, ask Urco, Domtar, Ocean Spray,
Mariani,
Renaissance.
I mean,
The hospital.
Ocean Spray,
Yeah.
Aspires. I mean, anybody
Well,
in this
it's
room.
the hospital are young professionals. Anybody that isn't a young professional with schooling, and again, is we need to target schooling for these kids to go to school with a degree that they can actually get a job in. What blows my mind is you went to college for 6 years to get a history degree instead of engineering degree. That's where we need to put our grants, and instead of spending $6 million of advertising, we should focus on, we got engineers, we're lacking engineers here. We're gonna send you to school. The agreement is that you have to stay in Wisconsin for 10 years. That's the kind of grants that everybody's looking for to pull people up. To me, that's a solution to everybody's problem. Targeting grants just to education that you get your money back in. I hate to say this, a young professional that's staying in Wisconsin that has an engineering degree is truly gonna add to our economy. These are the people that we need to do.
And a lot of those things we're doing in the Rural Wisconsin Initiative right now, to say whether it's advanced health clinicians, or whether it's dental, or whether it's, we've probably done 5 or 6 of these industries saying, hey, if you get your advanced degree or your regular degree and you're going to stay in rural Wisconsin for 5 years, we'll give you this much back off of whatever. We've been doing those programs through legislation the last 5 years in the Fast Forward and the Rural Wisconsin Agenda. You'll keep seeing more of those. Engineering, we just started the new engineering school at UW Green Bay. We just rebuilt the engineering school at UW Platteville, knowing that we have these challenges coming up. All of those things that, when we talk about the state budget, and I was going to bring my budget book in here that kind of go through all of those things, but if we had an extra couple hours, I could answer a lot of those things that we have done and that we are doing already, that are trying to make sure that we target that investment and those individuals to come back to rural Wisconsin in particular. Because, when you talk about, thank God somebody gave us Trump, those Trump voters in those rural areas have really increased our rural margins in the legislature too. So now it's not just an urban legislature so much. There's more people from rural Wisconsin in the legislature than there are from urban areas of Wisconsin. So we have that power right now. That's why we're seeing those bills come to the forefront.
And to highlight too, talking about, return on investment for college degrees. I mean, you can talk to Dr. Mansky, who works at UWSP, and even at the 4-year level, even at the technical college, you're seeing a huge shift in resources in the high demand fields, which are in STEM right now: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And I think you are seeing a much stronger effort to tell students exactly what their ROI is going to be on a particular degree, and have better educated consumers, so that way maybe they go in as a history major and realize, well, I'm probably not going to pay this back until I'm 40, 50 years old. Maybe I'm going to go a different route. You can still love history, still study it, but maybe choose a different career path that's going to lead to a better paying job and give you a little bit more sustainable income.
Thank you. Amy Sue?
Craig, I just want to add that, Harold, you talked about mentoring, and yesterday in Macmillan Library, there was, it's called Community Soup, and it was a woman who was incarcerated at Tachita, the women's prison in Wisconsin, down by Fond du Lac. And she talked about the barriers, when we talk about work shortage for workers and how we need these workers. She said some of the barriers for her were that, she has a felony on her record. So when she goes to apply, the first thing she has to do is check, have you ever been convicted, you have a felony, and she's got to check it, and all of a sudden, she's out. And she said, so she went around it, and she said she started her own business, and it's called Re-Entry and Associates. But what some of it is, and she had quite a few women who were incarcerated with her there, and, they were looking for employment, but the barrier for them is that, yeah, we screwed up, and we're sorry we did it, we learned, we got some skills when we were in prison at Tachita. If you don't screw up and you do everything you're supposed to do and follow the rules, that, you might be able to get a, beautician's license and some of those things. But she said that, there's so many people, she's like, I went to look, she's from Rudolph, and she said, I went to look for work all over, but as soon as they saw me check that box, she's like, I was out before I started. And I totally believe that you have a point there. With the, farm to school and the apprenticeships for young farmers, there's a lot of farmers now, young people who are going into agriculture. And it's not your traditional agriculture. They're thinking outside the box. And if Wisconsin could be a leader in thinking outside the box and welcoming opportunity and trying to welcome that creativeness, instead of saying, no, that doesn't work, it didn't work before. If we really open our eyes and open our hearts and say, something, everybody has something to contribute, and everybody should be welcoming somebody to contribute to our society, as opposed to saying, something, you made a mistake and we're gonna put that on you for the rest of your life. So I really think that we have opportunities there, but when we talked about the incarceration level, in Wisconsin it costs, over 90% of those incarcerated in our federal prisons will get out. And so I always thought, when I took a tour of Tachita, I went and I visited that prison, and Jackson and New Lisbon and a number of our state penitentiaries, as well as our federal one in Oxford, that, these people want an opportunity. Some of them did not come from the best lives, and they're trying to change their life around. But when you spend, this one gentleman in the federal pen, he spent his entire life, he was incarcerated when he was 19, now he's gonna be 37. And so he, you look at that lifespan that he has spent incarcerated, and they have a great culinary degree type that they can get when they get out. And so he's been really focused on that, and his dream is to get out and open up some mobile food restaurants, he called them. We'll call them a cart or whatever, but he's really focused on doing that. And he said, when I went in, I didn't know how to boil water. When I came, he goes, I didn't know how to boil water. And it's really that we have to look at that and just don't discount those folks. That we have to, they're trying. And we want them to be productive members of society, because we don't want that cost to go back on us, to have them re-incarcerated and start all over again. But I'm so glad that you brought that up. But there is it's going to be held again in Wisconsin Rapids, I believe, at Macmillan Library, and it's called Community Soup, and I would look out for that and partake. It's open to the public, and I think they have some really interesting, good stories to tell, but we have an opportunity to engage a workforce there as well.
And before we wrap, order going a little bit.
Harold,
I'm not sorry at all. We have a great senior center. These students, these young adults getting into adulthood, they can't go to the beer joint. So where did they go to mingle with their own kind? The senior center. I'd like to see that on a Saturday be a youth center. You got to start low and not wait until wrong decisions are made.
I think you'll start seeing that now with the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club, and it's going to be intergenerational. So I think bringing that to one part of the city is a great idea, and I think we'll see that more and more, intergenerational, intermingling, and people being able to mentor together.
These are lives that are being almost wasted, and they're going to be the leaders coming up.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Great discussion. They will be available for other, let's give them a again thank Ocean Spray and Domtar for their support today. Also like to thank Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, who is filming this. They do a great job to try to bring these types of events to the public, so thank you very much. Thanks to the Chamber. Have a great day. Have a nice Christmas. Thank you.